It's that time of year again. Yes, the time Leo wears a mustache, and our best of 2019. All the best bits from the last 52 shows next.
Podcasts you love.
From people you trust.
This is Twit.
This is Windows Weekly, episode 653, for Wednesday, Christmas Day, 2019. The best of 2019. Hello, everybody. I'm your host, Kurt Gowdy, Leo Laporte, bringing you our best of 2019 for Windows Weekly. Mary Jo Foley, Paul Thurrott, and a cast of some very interesting extras. And we had a lot of fun this year, learning about the new Windows 10 and all that stuff. Actually, let's start with the big issue that we talked about most of the second half of the year, the end of Windows 7, and how much it might cost, starting just a couple of weeks from now, to keep support.
So we knew that Microsoft was going to offer these things called extended security updates for Windows 7 to business customers, not consumers, and mostly large business customers. But we knew they were going to charge per device. That's what we already knew. But when we asked them last fall, how much are you going to charge? They said, you know what? You have to go ask your partner or your Microsoft rep. We're not going to tell you, which made me think maybe there wasn't a set price list for this, but there is. I got my hands on the price list, and it's interesting because it's a lot lower than many people thought. Although if you have many devices that you want these things for, it's going to cost you. So if you're an enterprise customer, in the first year that Windows 7 is no longer supported by Microsoft for free, you're going to be charged $25 per device to get the extended security updates for the year. If you're on Pro, you're going to pay double. You're going to pay $50 a device. And from there, every year for the 3 years that this happens and is allowed, your cost, whether you're enterprise or Pro, is going to double. So year 2 for enterprise customer, $50 per device to keep getting those patches. If you're on Pro, $100 per device. Year 3, if you're enterprise, you're up to $100 per device if you still want to keep getting these updates and not move off of Windows 7. Yeah. Windows 7 Pro users are going to pay $200 per device if they want to keep getting these security updates. If you don't do this, Windows 7 isn't going to stop working after January 14, 2020, but you just won't get any security updates, which is risky.
Yep.
So I had lots of people asking me, like, why is it so cheap? Like, I thought it was going to be millions of dollars.
So I have a theory about the price.
Yeah, what's your theory? Yeah, what is your theory?
It's low. It seems low because it would be low if this was something anyone could do, right?
Exactly.
If you as an individual could pay $25 and use Windows 7 for another year, I think a lot of people would probably do that.
They would.
But this is, I have the feeling, based on the wording, I went back and looked at their original announcement, which is actually pretty vague and pretty short. It's part of a bigger announcement. Yeah. I looked at the little chart and I thought about and you got a quote, right? I think it was you who got a quote from Microsoft, which was also delightfully vague. Yeah. But the basic gist of this is you need to talk to your Microsoft contact. Like whoever it is that you're paying for your Windows license is the person you're going to go through. And I think what most businesses are going to find when they go through that person is, A, they never got this email with the pricing, and B, they're never going to get it because they're not going to be offered it. And I think the reason the pricing is so low is literally because Microsoft is going to choose which companies can get this and which can't. And it's going to be the biggest companies. And the net cost is actually going to be astronomical because of the number of seats that those companies might have. I think medium-sized, smaller businesses are never going to be offered this.
No.
Because I think there are, especially the first year, I think there are some places that might say, this is actually going to make more sense for it. This will be less costly than moving to Windows 10. So I that's my guess, is that this doesn't represent some kind of a retail value of this thing because it's really based on volume.
My guess was this is like an estimated retail price. Like this is what, if somebody says how much is it, we'll say this price. But if you're a big huge customer with like 100,000 seats that aren't going to be ready to move. Let's make a deal, right?
Well, okay, that's absolute. By the way, that's true. That's a fact, right? So there's no such thing as a hard price for Windows,
right,
in the enterprise. And that's why you don't, that's why there isn't a cute little webpage, how much does Windows cost.com or whatever, where you can go and see the cost of Windows. Consumers pay a price for Windows, but businesses pay different prices.
They do.
Microsoft got into trouble for doing this with PC makers, right? Remember back in the day, this was a thing. Actually, they probably still do a form of this, right? I'm sure the world's biggest PC makers pay less for a Windows license to include on their computer than does Bob's white box PC company or whatever.
Yeah.
Yep.
Right. My other thought was, one reason I don't think Microsoft wanted these prices out there is because they want people to think it's hugely expensive, right? So they want people to be like, oh, I got to get off Windows 7. This is going to cost me millions of dollars, right? Or it's low because they know many people won't be ready and they would rather see them stay protected and take security updates than go out there like cowboys and not take security updates and keep running it.
I did your notion of different companies might pay different prices was I had sort of considered this earlier, and I was imagining some company seeing this and saying, oh, great, I thought this was going to be more expensive. Let's contact our Microsoft rep. And they come up with a price sheet for those guys that they push across the desk where it says, oh, no, for you, it's $150. It's not $25. And that's the thing, there's a risk here if the prices are different. For different businesses, that what we've seen is a price that doesn't reflect, what most companies are going to see in a negative way.
Yeah, that's a good point. So just to make it really clear to anyone listening to the show, most of you who are listening to the show, you won't be able to get this at all, right? You have to be a volume licensee of Microsoft. You have to be running Windows 10 Enterprise, preferably, or Pro. You have to be a big customer, basically. And I know a lot of people listening to this show are more like small business, or people who are like, yeah, I'm a mid-sized business. You probably won't even be able to qualify for this, I don't think.
Right. First of all, Microsoft did its first public demo of Project xCloud, right, which is this coming game streaming service. They streamed one of the Forza games to, I think it was an iPhone or smartphone of some kind that was mounted onto an Xbox controller. And then they issued a blog post where they kind of said what you would expect them to say, right? Which is, we don't expect this to take over for consoles and PC gaming. It's going to be complementary. It's going to let you play where you want to play, but of course they're going to say that, right? Like they have a business now that they can't destroy by saying this new thing is going to be everything, but this new thing is going to be everything, I think. I mean, not that consoles and gaming PCs go away completely, but I think we're already in a place today where the vast majority of gaming that occurs is occurring on these mobile devices anyway. And I think this is going to bring high quality arcades, or 3D style professional games where they belong, which is wherever people are. So I think it's kind of cool. A console in many ways is like a desktop PC was, a decade or so ago. I mean, naturally we moved to these devices, the laptops, 2-in-1s, whatever, where we can compute from anywhere. And I think that's happening with gaming, and I think that's what this is all about. So that's kind of cool. And then there were a bunch of smaller announcements that occurred as part of the same inside Xbox broadcast that they did. There's a new version of their see-through controller, which is really white. It's really white. It's white. It's really transparent. It's kind of cool looking. It's $70. It's coming out in April. Not the elite controller everyone's looking for, but it does look really nice. And then 2 game-related things that are actually really huge. And when you hear them, you kind of wonder why this didn't happen before. One is that Minecraft is finally coming to Xbox Game Pass. And I think that happens in April as well. And it's one of those things where you hear that and you're like, right, why wouldn't that have been in Xbox Game Pass? One of the deals with the Xbox Game Pass was all first-party games are going to be there. And anyway, now it will be. And then perhaps even bigger, the Master Chief Collection, which is all the main Halo games, had come out on Xbox One, actually right a couple of years ago at least. It is coming out finally on Windows. And so we haven't seen a top-tier Halo game on Windows since Halo 2 was released in the Windows Vista timeframe. So this is going back, 12, 13 years. I don't remember the exact number of games, but it's Halo 1 through 5 plus Halo Reach and some other games. They're going to release it over time. It's not clear if you own Master Chief Collection on Xbox, if you just get it for free on Windows. There's not a lot of information yet, but they did confirm that they're remastering all the games, bringing them to Windows. It's a big deal. I don't know why this hasn't happened yet. Halo is their biggest gaming IP. Well, maybe Minecraft is now, but Halo is the one they've had forever. And they just don't seem to do a bunch with it. But now they are finally bringing it to Windows. So finally, I'm not going to go through all the games, but Microsoft ahead of this, the GDC rather, announced 13 new ID at Xbox games. Just as a reminder, that's their independent game studio program. And so they have, I don't know, some 24 or 36 games they're going to be promoting at the show, but they announced 13 new ones just the other day. And then in kind of a goofy cross-platform note, and I don't know how this, I'm not really sure how they get away with this, but Epic's now by default, if you play Fortnite on Xbox or PlayStation 4, you will be teamed up against players on either console. So you'll actually be cross-platform gaming.
Is that good or bad? It feels like that's bad.
I don't know.
I don't know either.
In my opinion, PS guys are kind of...
That's the problem. See, I think that's how Xbox guys think.
Kind of shady.
They don't want to hang out with the PS guys.
Yeah, we're there for a reason. I don't know. I'm curious about that. So that one's interesting. I generally speaking, I would say I'm for this kind of thing, especially when it's a console. Once you move something to PC and Xbox, it gets into kind of a gray area.
Yeah, that's because the controls are so different.
Yeah, but Xbox, PlayStation,
We're just talking about the PlayStation people are such weenies.
Well, so I mean, having played the recent Call of Duty games on both consoles, I will say the experiences are nearly identical. It's the same sort of,
as long as they're the
people
same,
camp in the same places, the same idiots, I don't know.
But it's mostly about the controls and latency, and you want to be at parity.
Yeah, right. I mean, so I don't know how they're doing this. In fact, I thought Sony explicitly blocked this kind of thing. So anyway, they've enabled it. I don't know what to say. So I haven't tried it, but it's interesting. It's Wednesday, so we have another Xbox One sale. This sale, which I don't remember how long it runs. It doesn't really matter. But if you buy any Xbox One or bundle, which means Xbox One S or Xbox One X, you can choose from an unknown list of games and get a free game up to $60 value. So a lot of times what we see on Xbox is you get $50 off. So depending on which game you get, this might actually work out in your favor.
Really interesting Microsoft news.
Yeah, there is.
In a lot of different ways. But I think the one that stunned me this week was the announcement that Microsoft and Sony are going to work together.
Right.
Hereditary enemies.
This also apparently stunned the PlayStation team, who had never heard this was happening.
Yep.
So this was the president of Sony saying we're going to use Azure for PlayStation networking?
Well,
Azure, PlayStation gaming service.
Maybe.
Whatever it may be. Yeah.
Right? It was so vaguely worded, this whole thing. And that might just be legal mumbo jumbo, right? But
honestly, it wasn't as bad as my first pass. I was like, okay, wait a minute. What did they announce exactly? And then I kind of went through it again. I was like, well, actually, it's not too bad. I think the problem is at this point, at this juncture, they don't really have a thing they can announce, like PlayStation, blah, 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 whatever, running on Azure. But I'd be shocked if this didn't pan out the way they described it.
When I read it, I thought it either means Sony is going to use xCloud as their game streaming service, or it means Sony is building its own game streaming service that's going to use Azure as the hosting platform.
It
is, right?
Yeah. Yeah, and so this goes to the heart of what... Sorry.
No xCloud?
What is xCloud?
Well, no. So xCloud is Microsoft's service, right?
Right.
But it's not their game. It's not their game. It's a game service for Xbox.
But it's basically the streaming version of Xbox Game Pass.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's not out yet, but they've announced it.
Yeah.
And
right.
Why would Sony? I mean, it's the competitor to Sony's own streaming service.
But in the course of developing Azure, one of the many things they did was knowing that they'd be working on this game stuff, is they created workloads that are specific for video gaming, and those things can be used by any third party. So the interesting thing about this is I never suspected that Sony would turn to Microsoft for some reason. I always thought of it like, you're a publisher like Activision or a smaller game maker, whoever you may be. Obviously, you could turn to Microsoft and use their back-end services for your own service. I thought the big play for them was going to be Nintendo, because Nintendo has almost no
they need it
scalable online service type stuff, and so it would make
sense.
But
there are rumors about Nintendo and Microsoft, right?
Oh yeah, I know, and that makes sense to me. I will say, just to put a little asterisk on this story, there is no way that Sony would only use Microsoft for their coming game service, right? In the sense that any hyper-scalable cloud service of the future will want to have at least two providers in case one goes down, or because certain things work better in certain areas, whatever it might be. You can expect Sony to sign up with AWS in the future, or somebody else. I think that's the one thing we have to kind of keep in perspective here. They're almost certainly not only going to use Microsoft's infrastructure.
What does PlayStation Network use right now? Do we know?
That's what I wondered too. Do they use their own cloud?
I can't imagine that they do. But the way to think about this is Sony today has a game streaming service called PlayStation Now, and they have some number of games. Actually, they have hundreds of games. They have a lot more games in that service than Microsoft has in Xbox Game Pass. But the percentage of PlayStation users today who are actually streaming games over that service, compared to PlayStation gamers who are downloading games and playing them on the machine directly, or putting a disc in the drive and playing it that way, has got to be tiny, 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 right? But when you look at the future of gaming, as Microsoft, Sony, Google, also Amazon really, and probably others envision it, to actually stream games to some majority of gamers, which I think is where this is heading, you need an infrastructure size that's much, much bigger than anything Sony has. And I think what they realize is they have to partner with some others, and it will be others, not other, to make that happen. It's not something they have to worry about for 2019 or 2020 or whatever. It's there'll be future Sony consoles. The mix will come and go. It will work a lot like it did with digital music. In the beginning when iTunes came out, Steve Jobs said nobody wants to rent music or whatever. Well, you know what? Today they do, and I think that's how gaming is going to go as well.
Yeah, I think
I
completely agree.
Amazon's building its own game streaming service, everybody believes, right? And Google has one, or is building one, and Microsoft has one. So it's not like they're picking Azure because they're the only one that's not a competitor, or is a competitor. It's like everybody's going to have a service.
Yeah. Well, okay. So there are two sides to this, right? So Google has a service called Stadia or whatever, right? Stadia, I think is the name of it. That's Google's service, right? There's no concept yet of some other company licensing Stadia, right? Although maybe that happens, I don't know. But right now, that's just the Google service. Right. Google also has back-end infrastructure that they sell to other companies, just like Amazon does, just like Microsoft does. They just happen to be a little smaller, but they do have it. Yeah. And they talk about the reach of all that and everything. So Activision or Nintendo or Sony or whoever could use them, maybe use them with other companies, whatever. It doesn't mean they're using Stadia. I think we got to be careful about what we're comparing here. I mean, they're using Google's back-end infrastructure. And that's what Sony is doing with Azure, or looking at doing, I guess. I always thought that one of the big advantages that Microsoft had was that they could kind of win by losing in this coming generation of streaming, because if they're getting the money on the back end from other services, who cares if xCloud is number 2 or number 3 in the market? They could still end up making more money, more profits, more revenues, whatever, if enough other companies license their Azure technologies, right? Well, now you've got the number one player in video games announcing a deal, which is why this is such a big deal. What if Sony won, whatever that means, the cloud streaming market, just like they've won the console generation today, but they had to use Azure to do it, right? I mean, this is like Microsoft winning by losing. It's kind of interesting.
So let me throw out another question, and I'm just showing my gaming ignorance.
Okay.
Oops. Wait a minute.
If you paid attention during the Xbox segment every week, Mary Jo.
Sound.
She's disappeared from the ether. She unplugged her. So, I hear you.
I lost my sound for a second.
We hear you. I think.
Okay.
Yeah.
So when Microsoft has said xCloud's going to be a cross-platform gaming service, do you think they could mean as much as, and it would work on Sony consoles?
Oh, of course. Yeah.
Yeah.
Assuming that Sony allowed them. Yeah.
Right. So that's what made me think this announcement might have two parts, like the xCloud part and then just the pure Azure part, right? But the way that announcement was worded was so vague. Well, it was like they're exploring opportunities. Right?
Yeah, they specifically called it Azure, right? Which to me says it's not. They never said anything about xCloud. No. That's a different discussion in a way. It doesn't mean it's not going to happen, but it absolutely could happen, right? So Microsoft has some standalone service called xCloud. We know it's going to work on mobile. We know it's going to work on Windows. We know it's going to work on Xbox. Probably at some time it's going to make sense for this thing to work on smart TVs, to work on Rokus and Apple TVs, Sony PlayStation 5 or whatever they call the next console. Yeah, that would make sense. I mean, today you don't see Xbox on Sony. You don't see Sony games on Xbox, et cetera, et cetera. But, this is the new open Microsoft. And Sony, I mean, I don't know if people understand how big of a deal this is, aside from the obvious. Sony is the company that blocked crossplay, right? On I don't know, on Minecraft and on other games in recent years. I mean, this is kind of an interesting thing. I suppose I could imagine Sony saying, "Look, we don't want xCloud on PlayStation, but we still want to use Azure for the backend." And that would be acceptable to Microsoft. That's still a net win for Microsoft.
Right. Okay.
Yeah. I guess we're just kind of reading the tea leaves because they've said.
We are. We're just trying to read into what the thing said, because it was pretty vague. When I saw this last week, I immediately said to Paul, "I wonder if this was supposed to be a build announcement."
Oh, by the way, as soon as you said that, I completely agree. And the reason is, remember they talked about the 4 clouds, right? And gaming was one of them, and they had nothing to show for it. Oh. And that was really weird because when I read that, I thought, wow, they really think xCloud's going to be a bigger deal than I would have imagined. And that's not what that means, right? I mean, it doesn't mean they don't think xCloud won't be big, but when you put Sony into the equation, that becomes part of their gaming cloud in a way, right? They're servicing these giant gaming engines from other companies.
So is this just a partner announcement, really?
It's a customer win announcement, right? That's how I looked at it
really
in a way.
It's don't
but
read
you
much
don't underplay
it.
But it's Sony, right? I mean, in other words,
I know. No, it's big.
If Bethesda Software said, "Hey, we're going to have an online service and it's going to run on Azure and like the next version of Doom. If you want to play it online, that's one of the ways you can do it." And that would be cool. That's cool.
But it fits.
Actually, Bethesda was on the Sony thing, but I mean
the Microsoft agnostic kind of.
Yes,
they want. Nadella's trying to position them as above the power. The competition, OS competition, and all that. We serve everyone equally.
It also, but it also slots into the direction for the company where we keep talking about how the future is Azure. We always say this. You look at the financials today, and it's like it's not all Azure, obviously, but they're kind of heading in that direction. And this neatly puts gaming in that direction and very fully, and in a much bigger way than just the future of Xbox Live is on Azure. It's great. I mean, there's only some tens of millions of people who are doing that. There's only some single-digit millions that are doing Xbox Game Pass today. We're not talking about a giant scalable thing like you would see with Azure more broadly. It's just not hundreds of millions or billion users. It's not. But if you can get Sony on there, if you can get other third parties on there, gaming is humongous. Gaming is bigger than Hollywood movies, right? It's like it's one of the biggest entertainment markets in the world. Microsoft's not going to have all of it.
Is this analogous to? Nobody ever wanted to admit it. I'm sure Microsoft would love to announce it, but Apple's iCloud ran on Azure.
It did, in part.
We knew that.
Yeah, I was going to say, but not fully, right? And that's the point. In other words, you never want to rely on one provider for something.
Well, most people are multi-cloud these days, right?
Yes.
This is a very common. Yep. I know this because when I was at the 1000 Eyes event, it was a sponsor of ours, but they talked a lot about this. That what people are often trying to figure out is how I can do multi-home cloud that way. So I'm not relying on anyone.
It's just like look, this is big for us. We cover Microsoft for a living, so this is a big deal. But, this is a lot like that PWA conversation. You download an app for the store and you never think like, oh, I wonder if this was written in C++, or I wonder if this was a web app. Like
you shouldn't have
normal
to
people
care.
don't. Yeah.
You shouldn't have
if
to
you're
care.
if you're some gamer and you're in Connecticut or Utah or Africa or wherever you are and you're playing your game and, something in some data center goes off site or offline or whatever, and wherever it is, you don't have to think about that stuff. You don't care if you're running on AWS or Azure or whatever. You're just playing the game, and that's what this is. They're providing electricity.
And it's not really a capitulation by Sony, or is it? And no, they're not saying, well, what we were doing didn't work, so we're going to go to Microsoft.
No, they don't have. How could they possibly?
We don't know what they were
deploy
doing.
infrastructure.
We don't know
like
what they were
this
doing,
Right.
Yeah,
it makes perfect sense, really.
Yeah, we know they're not always. Well, I've never seen them listed in the top 10 cloud vendors list of any kind.
Yeah,
right. I mean, they may have their own data centers that have been running their gaming cloud service, right? But
you know what this is a little bit like is the new Edge, right? Microsoft would describe it as, look, we took all the great stuff from Chrome, stripped out all the Google garbage, and we're going to build the best browser. We think we're going to have the best browser. If you look at what Sony said about this agreement, they said we're going to use Microsoft's cloud, and we're going to build the best entertainment service in the world on top of it. So they're going to do their own thing.
It would be foolish to assume that they're going to use xCloud or support xCloud or anything.
I don't think that's even a thing.
That's a separate deal.
Right?
Yeah,
I could be completely wrong.
It could be a separate deal.
Yeah. I mean, it could happen or it could not happen, but it's not tied to this.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
I don't think so. I mean, it doesn't say anything about xCloud.
Right.
It's just another partner win. It's just another
it is, but a huge one. And there was another part of it that we didn't touch on, which is they also announced an alliance so that Microsoft Azure AI technologies are going to somehow work with Sony image sensors in consumer products, but they don't say which products. How that's going to work?
Well, it would be Windows Hello, right?
Well, it could be a future VR type thing. It could be. It could be anything. Look, they make phones, which
TVs,
a lot of people think. Right? Yep. I mean, it could be all kinds of things.
Well, Sony sensors are in most phones, including the iPhone. I mean, they're the #1 camera sensor out there.
So maybe this is going to be. Actually, you said Windows Hello. I think that's pretty smart. Somebody walks into a room. The TV or the console or the service, whatever, recognizes them. They get their customized content.
It's not like Microsoft makes a phone, so it wouldn't be that kind of relationship.
Too soon, Leo. Too
Painful. Painful subject. And this is not like Google saying, oh, yeah, we're giving up on the cloud. We're going to use Azure. This is a company that doesn't really have a cloud presence of any kind. We don't know.
That's the point, yeah.
It might be like Facebook. It might be like Facebook saying, we're going to use Azure. That would be a big victory. I mean, Facebook runs their own network, as far as I know. They don't use anybody else's cloud. But
look, Sony is going to always be competitive in video gaming. They probably. I mean, look, if there's no reason to believe they're not
Windows laptops too. I mean, they're partners in other.
Actually, no, they don't.
They used to.
Sold
it. They don't.
Yeah.
They sold
really?
I remember.
Yeah.
But they used to. So I mean, it's not like they're enemies in every way. They're friends.
I don't even think they're enemies per se. I mean, obviously they compete, but
that's right.
I don't.
That's a kind of that's a naive way to look at business, is to say, oh, this is an enemy, this is a competitor, this is a friend. That's like a different scale, operating on a different scale.
Right.
That's operating on a personal scale as opposed to a business scale.
Right.
I mean,
I feel like we attribute sometimes these kind of things because we think, oh, they must be an enemy, right? Like Salesforce, they must hate Microsoft, right?
They're not humans.
Well, actually, I think Salesforce does hate Microsoft.
I think Mark Benioff.
It'd be fair to say Mark Benioff does, but that doesn't speak. He doesn't.
It doesn't mean the company does.
That's right.
Necessarily.
Exactly. Okay. Yeah. So maybe we're reading a little too much into this. Because
it's still a big deal because
it is.
It's not Sony is licensing Azure for use in their something department, TVs or something. I mean, they're literally licensing Azure for video games, and that's the reason it's interesting is because both companies compete in that market. Today, Sony is wiping the floor with Microsoft, but I've been saying this for a while, a couple of years now. Microsoft's strength in cloud computing is going to give it a leg up in this coming generation of streaming. How does Sony respond to that? I mean, in a way that I didn't see coming. It was like a little twist ending Game of Thrones thing there. I don't know. I don't think anyone would have predicted this. I don't believe anyone did.
I don't either.
Apple uses Sony camera parts. Samsung uses Sony camera parts. Apple uses Samsung memory in its. This is called business.
It is. Yep.
And it's not like humans where I don't like my neighbor and I'll be damned if I'll borrow his chainsaw.
Sure. Well, if you did, that could get ugly.
Yeah, it's just not. It's a different.
Yeah,
it's a different world.
It is.
And
people are more companies like at that level. They're more practical.
Yeah,
right? It's like, we're going to get money out of this. Yeah, let's do it.
In fact, it's always embarrassing when you see something like Steve Jobs saying, "I'm going to kill Google." That's more like a monarch talking than a business person talking.
Right.
It's a naive way to think about business. It's not personal. It's never personal. So that story, that Sony plus Microsoft story, broke in May. Not a lot has happened since, except you can now do Minecraft crossplay from your PlayStation to an Xbox. Maybe that's what it was all about. I have to tip doff my cap, my little pom-pom, to Paul Thurrott, because he is a brave, brave man. I think he's actually a true American hero, because at one point in May of this year, he faced nearly certain death, but he did not abandon his podcasting duties. Watch this.
There's the alert.
Well, I think it's time to run from the house and run around crazily in your cul-de-sac.
How do I turn this?
Until the wind picks you up and takes you away.
Wow. What does it say on the alert?
Area.
What is tornado warning?
15. Yeah, tornado warning for the next 15 minutes.
Paul, I would take that now. Take shelter, Paul.
Yeah, but come on.
That's what they say, and then they get
what am I, a
witch's house on them.
Look out the window. Actually, do you see Dorothy's house spinning around?
Don't get near glass.
Guys, nothing is going to happen because it's totally quiet now.
That's the giveaway.
All right. Totally I'll look outside. Will that make you feel better?
Yeah, it would.
Do you have a window near there?
Yeah, I have a window right.
All right, ladies.
Get away from the window.
If the view is different, should I be worried?
Wow.
So the one time I was in a tornado, I was in Kansas, and I was outside. I was playing ball with my stepdaughter, and all of a sudden I look out and I saw the cyclone cloud, and my mother-in-law at the time yelled in, "What are you two doing out there? Get in here." It's like, no joke. No joke.
What do you see, Paul?
So it's weird.
Do you see a cyclone cloud?
Weird is the word you don't want to use.
No.
So before it was super loud and rainy and weird, and now it's like super sunny but really wet.
Yeah. You're in the eye of the storm.
I'm in the eye. Yeah. The eye of the hurricane or whatever. I don't know. It's okay. I'll be okay.
Well, at least we'll have video of it when it happens.
Mm-hmm. Yikes. Yep. I'm looking at the weather map, and you have the bright, dark orange cloud right over your area, right at Allentown and all in there. It's right there.
If I go to dark sky and look at Emmaus, is that where you are technically? Because we never know.
No, Lower Macungie.
You really are Lower Macungie? That's really?
Yeah, that's where I am physically, yeah.
Lower, I don't even know how to spell Macungie. But
look how this cloud is coming right towards New York. Look at that.
You guys are just scaring me.
It's coming our way.
Tornado watch, Lower Macungie Road, Upper Macungie Township, PA. Is that close enough?
Yep, that's close.
Well, I don't know if we should be using dark sky to determine whether Paul should evacuate.
Yeah, I don't think we should be counting on that. I assume
if there's a tornado, my wife will open the door and break through the fourth wall between the podcast and real life and say, hey, maybe we're going to go in the cellar.
Stop. Yeah, you should probably stop podcasting.
I'll get a text message. We'll say, we're all in the cellar.
Where are you?
Where are you, Paul?
I thought we'd tell you afterwards.
Well, let me ask you this. How close are you and your wife these days?
Yes, right.
Yeah.
We just celebrated our 29th anniversary.
Yes. She probably wouldn't want to lose you just yet. Why do I keep getting Centerville, PA? Is that near you?
So
every time I type Lower Macungie. Lower. I really want to see.
The message is really alarming, I have to say.
As it should be.
No kidding. That's why it's called an alarm.
Take shelter now. What is this?
What they're
like
saying.
Shelter in place?
And Paul, you're like those guys who say, well, that doesn't mean me. Just tornado watch. Rain starting in 30 minutes.
It was raining heavily before.
Yeah.
So, most of that stuff, if I'm understanding this map, is... Oh, yeah, we're right under that.
Where are you? Where are you on this?
That dark cloud over there to the right?
Like 78 and 29. You can't really see it on that map, though.
It looks like you're all right.
Yeah.
This map is missing those little arrows, though, that say which is going which, but it looks like everything's going east.
Right.
Yeah, it's all going due east. So there's Allentown, Bethlehem.
Where's that? Point to Allentown?
Allentown's right here.
Oh, yeah. Okay, we're south of that.
So you're here.
So I think
there's the diamond. I see the diamond.
Yeah, that's me. That's probably me.
That's why it's not raining. Yeah, it says Paul Thurrott's right here.
Yeah.
That's
so
you.
Actually, I pretty much am right there. So that thing that's to the right is probably the weird rain we had before. Yeah.
You're fine. Unless this is precipitation. Do tornadoes show up? Let's look at wind speed.
Yeah. No, it's very calm out there right now, Leo. It's in fact, it's oddly calm.
It is. It's oddly calm. That's what they said right before the tornado hit. Feels like they should have a tornado radar.
What about like a barometer type thing? Doesn't a barometer go flying off the charts when there's a tornado?
Let's look at the.
I got to go back and watch Twister again. I don't remember how this works.
Is 1,000 high?
Exactly right. Is this metric or?
Wait a minute. Here's the emoji. Here's the emoji cloud. They got a little frowny guy.
Yeah.
Little frowny guy. That's the emoji.
I think that might be a confused face.
Yeah.
It's curiously sunny. Given how much rain we just had.
I don't know what to look at. Temperature feels like cloud cover, precipitation, wind speed. I guess wind speed is about the closest, and it's not bad.
Yeah. It doesn't look like much.
No, I don't see anywhere where it's over 15 kilometers per hour, so you're all right. You're fine.
Yeah.
You're fine.
That's what I'm thinking.
What does the poop emoji mean in the context of a
exactly.
weather forecast?
Means it's not so nice outside.
I think this. I don't know. I've never seen this on Dark Sky. The emoji forecast, but Paul's emoji forecast is.
He hates emoji.
Yeah, I know. That's why I was giving him the.
I've never heard of any of these places.
That's good. I like that you're doing it.
Yeah. This is Paul's emoji cast.
Nice.
Yeah.
Just for you.
Yeah. Some people are confused. So
I literally have heard of none of those towns other than Allentown and Bethlehem.
Okay.
Which is really funny
not
because
near Haynes or Zion Hill or Longsdale.
Nope.
Chauffeur, or is it Scofer?
Nope. It's definitely Chauffeur, but I don't know.
I think this is that yellow dot is Paul right there. You're okay, Paul.
I am roughly right there. I will say that. That's probably pretty
amazing. Okay, let's continue on.
Let's try to plow through before he has to.
Before the tornado plows through.
Yeah.
Lower Macungie Valley. Really, it seems silly to talk about the IntelliMouse Pro when Paul's life is in peril, but let's go ahead and do it.
Okay, so Microsoft is at Computex, like all their PC maker partners. They put out this long blog post talking about all the new PCs that everyone's showing at Computex. Then they throw in this paragraph about a modern OS into it.
That's where I saw it, yeah.
So, guys, we say this on Windows Weekly every week, but can you communicate, please? Can you
By the way,
really?
I want to tell you how much I enjoy the fact that you're ranting about something that I want to rant about, because this is absolutely a huge problem, the way they did this.
But they are enabling innovation and opportunity on the intelligent edge.
The way they did this and where and how is so horrible.
Yeah. Well, and they dropped this thing on us last night at 8 p.m. or something. I looked at it on my phone. I had to install Word on my phone. It was too small to read because it doesn't properly, scroll around. I went on my computer. I booted the thing up again. I looked at it. I was like, PC, modern OS, IoT, nothing. And so I forwarded it to Mehedi. And I said, I don't know if you're around tonight, but if you are, look through this, see if you see anything interesting. It doesn't look like there's anything important here. I'll look at it again in the morning. then I looked at it again in the morning, and I was like, oh, my God.
Oh, my God.
They may have just dropped the first public hint about Light OS, probably, or whatever we're calling this thing. And here's the well, I wouldn't call it proof.
Well, there's a bunch of problems, right?
Yeah, go ahead. Okay.
So one is, they announce all these PCs at Computex with their partners, and they're all running Windows 10. Some are running probably 1803, some 1809, maybe some even 1903. And then they start talking about this aspirational idea of, here's where we'd like to take our operating system platform in the future. So none of those PCs that are shown are running this.
That's right.
Right? And they probably will not
Windows
be.
10. Right.
Right.
Right. In fact, all of those PCs are premium computers.
They are.
They're going to be running advanced versions of Windows 10.
Right.
You get. This is I broke this. Leo's zooming in if you can't see it on the text of the thing. I broke this down in my own article because this is. I often use this as a joke, but it is particularly applicable in this case. If you were to push this through Word and ask it to summarize it, it would come up with a blank page. It almost says nothing.
What's the first sentence isn't even grammatical. These new modern PCs and innovative devices, the ecosystem will continue to build and bring to market in the future. Oh, comma, require a modern operating system. But
unfortunately, they're not getting.
They're not getting it. They're getting so that's the premise is these are great new PCs which require a modern operating system, not the one they're running.
Yeah. But which because the very first enabler they discuss is seamless updates that are done invisibly in the background. With a deterministic, reliable, and instant
no interruptions.
Right.
No interruptions.
So, so a couple more points. Microsoft uses the word modern just helter-skelter throughout their world. Remember, Windows
was briefly modern.
Windows had the modern UI, right?
Windows 8 apps were modern, right?
Modern for about 10 minutes.
The Metro design language at one point was called Modern, I believe, right?
That's right. You're right. Right.
Microsoft 365 is known as the modern desktop. Yep. That's how Microsoft pitches it. Right? So this word modern is super loaded in the Microsoft world. And then they start talking about a modern operating system. And they have all these goals, like you said, the seamless updates. They've got seamlessly switching between Wi-Fi and LTE, 5G.
5G specifically.
Right.
Do we think that any of these are actually going to support 5G?
No. Well, maybe that Lenovo device that they wouldn't say which version of Windows it was running?
The ones they announced in this thing specifically.
By the way, these aren't merely enablers. I see in the second paragraph, they're enablers and delighters.
Delighters. Okay, so
and
that is the one.
Vision. That's not a word. Is delighters a word?
I sent Microsoft a note back when I saw delighters, and I said, and by the way, delighters is not a word.
That's awesome. Good for you. Well,
and I said, everyone's going to make fun of you for using it.
They use the word vision there, which means it's not what we have today. And then for the first time, modern is capitalized.
Oh, that means it's a proper
modern
noun.
Modern desktop is too. Modern desktop is a capitalized term.
But nowhere else in this.
Nowhere else in the.
Nowhere else. Okay. Nice. This doesn't really. This must. Who wrote this?
I don't know.
Right.
And so everyone listening, we're not being grammar nitpickers here as much as it sounds like we are. We're just trying to say, when you read this, you don't know what this is discussing.
It makes no sense.
No, actually, we're absolutely not being nitpickers. One thing that we have developed carefully honed skills for, because we cover Microsoft, is parsing their language to understand what it is they're really trying to say.
Right.
Now, what's beautiful about this is this could very closely follow another story that we'll have coming up later about this Windows Home Ultra thing, where they could come back later and say, guys, we never said anything about another operating system. We're not talking about anything that's not Windows.
It's the future of Windows, maybe.
They could completely deny this. But here's the thing. Reading this, and anyone watching the show should read this. I mean, if you're interested in Windows at all, which it seems like you would be, why does it say brick wall under my name, Leo?
What are you talking about, Paul?
Anyway,
I'm trying to figure out where you are, and the only geographic feature I can see is the brick wall.
It's anyway. So I believe, and now this is just this part's an opinion for sure. I think this is their first public feeler for what they're planning, and I think it's Light OS. I think what they're trying to get into people's heads is the idea that there'll be this other thing that will be a modern take on an operating system. By the way,
is that lower or uppercase?
Yes. Well, in that case, lower.
Okay.
More than one person has said to me or has said on Twitter or wherever in comments, it sounds like they're describing iOS. And that's actually very insightful, because we know from dealing with Terry Myerson in the past that his plan for the App Store ecosystem and everything was not to model Android, right? But was rather to be more like iOS. And he meant that literally in the good and bad sense. Like, he wanted it to be a walled garden, protected, locked off. And that's very interesting, because if you kind of read it, it's like one of those things, change the words, change it from modern OS to iOS. And you're like, yeah, this pretty much does describe iOS.
It's really I would say it's a manifesto for what an operating system should be.
Yeah, yes. I feel like that too.
I don't feel like it's doable.
Me neither.
None of the existing operating systems, including Chrome OS or iOS, do seamless updates with no interruptions. In every case, you have to reboot. Secure by default, that's a nice aspirational goal, but as we know, undoable. Always connected, never have to worry about a dead spot, but what if I'm in a dead spot?
Well, by the way, just so in case it's not obvious, there are a couple of terms in there that are Microsoft classics. Secure by default goes back to the Trustworthy Computing Initiative 2002, I think it was. Always connected, right, is the Always Connected PC initiative that Microsoft and Intel both have, both with different hyphenations. And then there are some actual brand new terms in here, which I think are very interesting.
By the way, is hyphenated.
Yeah, right. Intel hyphenates Always Connected, Microsoft doesn't. Multi-sense is interesting, right? Because it's not describing anything we're not comfortable with already today for the most part. Maybe gaze is a little different, but I don't believe I've ever seen that term. I could be, maybe I'm wrong, but it seems like they're putting...
They define it as people can use pen, voice, touch, even gaze, whatever input user or method wants to.
Yeah, so gaze is like the stuff in HoloLens, where with your eyes you can look up to the corner and essentially select.
Samsung's had that for a couple of years now.
Yeah.
With mixed success.
Yeah, but Samsung is modern, Leo. That makes sense.
Yeah, actually, they could be describing iOS, except for seamless updates, secure by default, always connected, and sustained performance.
By the way, the phrase form factor agility, which is brand new to me, is another way of saying one Windows, right? It's this notion that you're going to have a single modern OS in this case. We're kind of redefining things. That's going to work on multiple form factors. It's just a cute new way of saying it.
Form factor agility means they have the right sensor support and posture awareness to enable the breadth of innovative form factors and applications our partner system will deliver. In other words, the sensors are built in to say you can use this in, lying on your back, sitting upright, leaning over.
Really, 'cause when I hear form factor agility, I think phone, tablet, PC,
iOS. Yeah. Yeah. Well, I think this is aspirational. It's a manifesto.
It is.
I think every operating system probably should aspire to this.
And I feel like this has been their manifesto.
Like the Unabomber's manifesto.
This is the same manifesto they've had, right? Like always connected. That's been a goal for years. And instant on, right? All these things, connected standby, all these things. And I feel like they've never gotten there.
That this is marketing nonsense?
Maybe.
Actually, it's worse than marketing nonsense, because they're not actually selling anything.
You know what I feel like it is?
They're selling a vision.
It's a cut and paste of an internal document.
I kind of do too. And you know what? We thought they were going to talk about Windows Light at Build. And then when they didn't, you kind of wonder if the team who was at Computex didn't get the message, and they were like, oh, wait, they announced that, didn't they? Oh, no, they didn't. Whoops.
Oh, I guess we just did. So, by the way, I've sort of, like you probably, you have to, because, again, we write about Microsoft. We're semi-obsessed on this topic. I think about this stuff, like what was the point of this, or why wouldn't they have done this at Build, et cetera, et cetera. I have to think with the timing of think about when PCs are announced. CES, announced but not released. Computex, announced and released in time for the back-to-school season, right? And then, of course, at IFA in the fall, in time for, announced and released in time for the holidays. if you go back to Build is obviously closer to Computex, but it's between CES and Computex. My thinking is they wanted to announce this, but there was someone in the partner ecosystem or something who said, guys, we can't announce a new operating system in May and then later in May announce a ton of new computers running the old operating system. We can't do that. That's crazy.
Plus, they're not ready. Light's not ready. I mean, that's the other thing. I mean, they don't want to totally tip their hand and say, hey, we got this thing. It's called Windows Light. It has Windows Core OS inside, and here's how it's going to handle updates. Does it exist yet? No. Is it on any test devices? Is it anywhere? No.
The week of Build, I heard they were still debating what this thing even was.
Yeah.
It's
not anywhere near ready, right?
Right. So my guess now. So anyway, given the fact that they did say, okay, look, they said it. You don't like someone, Leo, I think said it sounds like something, or one of you said it sounds like something from an internal document. It does. In fact, I kind of wonder if someone copied and pasted it by mistake into the press release.
I kind of wondered that too.
It doesn't make sense in the flow of the document, but okay, it's out there. So when would be the next time?
Accidentally pasted too much,
right? Well, it
feels like that.
Sense.
No,
here's a bunch of computers. Here's
and they won't run this operating system, but maybe someday in the perfect world.
The other thing they have to explain when they ever do decide to start talking publicly about Windows Core OS and Light, they have to explain to people, okay, so your Windows 10 is not going away, right? Because Microsoft and its partners are continuing to develop on Windows 10. There are Windows 10 test builds coming out through next year already, right? Yeah. Oh, yeah. Microsoft 365 uses Windows 10 as it exists today. So you can't just say to them, hey, can we get this thing over here? It's not even going to be called Windows. So yeah, that's the future. And you're running this past, I guess.
This piece of crap that you're running is
Sorry about that.
It's a tough marketing message. And listen, there's some things we kind of know about this Light OS stuff. There's some things we kind of speculate.
Yeah.
When I think about this, I think of something that is very much like Chrome OS. And I have to say, in a world in which people mostly use their phones to do computing tasks, but sometimes need a bigger screen and a keyboard, I actually think a system like that makes sense. And in the same way that Microsoft taking Chromium and turning it into a non-Google version of that makes sense, a Microsoft Chromebook kind of thing makes sense. For normal people, it's fine. And Windows 10 becomes like the workstation OS. It's the thing for complex tasks, for developers, for engineers, scientists, gamers, whatever. That's fine. It's just that we don't have this thing yet. I just made up what I just said. It doesn't exist. So it makes sense, but lots of things make sense.
The positioning, how they position this and explain who it's for, and if it comes out in stages, which I bet it will, will Win32, the ability to run Win32 apps be there from day one?
That's the crux of it, is
it
how
kind
do
of
they handle
is
app compatibility, because that's what killed Windows 10S and S Mode and Windows RT before it.
Right.
Those systems also suffered from looking just like Windows. They were Windows. And so when you get this thing that is Windows and it doesn't run Windows apps, it's very confusing. Light OS, from what I've seen, it's actually going to look a lot more like Chrome OS unless they change it. I think that will help. But if the thing could run, even if it ran them poorly through virtualization or remotely or however it works, that would be better than not being able to run those apps.
That's their goal. I've talked to people who said it is going to run Win32 apps, but the when is the question. And if it's virtualization, is that going to be good enough? Like you said.
Speaking of which, the other thing is, if you read through this document, we talked about replacing the words modern OS with iOS. The other thing you could replace them with is a Qualcomm Snapdragon powered PC.
Oh yeah,
because it reads a lot like that.
Well, and that might be in the future, right? I mean.
Yeah, so I wonder if that's part of the vagueness of it and the future-leaning nature of it, is that they are, in fact, waiting on the Qualcomm 8CX, which we now know is delayed until next year, to happen, because that's what they're relying on.
So, Scarlet, we knew that name.
Yep.
We knew it would be spelled with 2 T's for reasons no one knows.
Yep.
But we didn't know it wouldn't come out this year. Or did we?
Yeah. You know what? When Sony announced earlier this year that their next PlayStation wouldn't arrive until 2020, maybe that should have been a clue.
Yeah.
I don't think Microsoft has ever fared well launching earlier than Sony. I guess they didn't fare well launching at the same time as Sony either, actually. But we probably should have anticipated that. I have to be honest, I did not. I was surprised by that. So I thought we were going to see the next gen Xbox this holiday season. I think that lines up pretty neatly if you look at the release schedule thus far. The original Xbox to the S to the X to what this would have been I think it's a clean couple of years in each case, but that's not what's happening.
So the Xbox original, I remember this because I went up to Seattle for the big event, was November 2001.
That's
right.
right. The first one.
Right.
The first one.
And
I'm
then,
talking about Xbox One especially. I'm sorry.
Well, I'm just thinking, I'm trying to think of what the cadence is. And then how long before Xbox 360? Was that 4 years? 3 years.
It was 2005. And it preceded the PlayStation 3 by 1 year, if I remember correctly. That one didn't come out until 2006.
Okay.
The original Xbox, let's see if I can do math, which we know I can't.
Uh-oh.
So stop. Don't hurt yourself, Paul.
No, 2013, right? The original Xbox One.
Yeah.
2015 for the Xbox One S. 2017 for the Xbox One X.
Although I would say all the ones are kind of a. I mean, there's not huge differences, are there? Or are there?
No. There
That's
are a lot
a generation.
Yeah, but that's what Scarlet is really, right? So if you look at the Xbox One X today and you say, okay, here we have this 4K console. It can technically play 4 games, but let's be serious.
Right.
It's not really hitting 4K all the time.
No.
Game makers have the ability to decide what capabilities they're going to include. They might choose frame rate over resolution. They might go in the reverse, et cetera, et cetera. So how would you fix this console, right? Obviously, it's going to be backward compatible. It's going to run the same game, same controller, same.
That was, I thought, interesting. They said it would run all the previous Xbox games, right?
Well, that doesn't surprise me in the slightest. See, I think the one thing people are maybe misunderstanding here is that this is not a new kind of console. This is a new Xbox One, right? This is going to be the 4th Xbox One. How they brand that, I guess we'll see, but that's what this is. It's not a brand new from, greenfield development kind of new thing. It's an Xbox One. So it's going to be an evolution of the Xbox One X. Well, what would that be? Well, to me, it was always really obvious. This thing has to be 4K all the time at 60 frames per second all the time. That has to be the baseline for this thing. And that is literally the baseline for this thing. It will exceed those in certain ways, but it will exceed those in the same way that the Xbox One X was or is 4K. In other words, 8K graphics, but you're not going to get 60 frames a second. Or 120 frames a second, which is another part of it. The ability to run at 120 frames a second. It's not going to do both of those all the time. It's probably going to do both of those never together. I mean, that's not the point of this thing. The point is what I said earlier. It really is about 60 frames per second, 4K, 100% of the time. That's the baseline, and that I feel is reason enough to justify the existence of this product. And I think it also just speaks to the strategy with this generation of consoles, which is to keep all the backward compat and keep all of your stuff moving forward. So if you're the owner of a previous gen Xbox One, whichever version it is, you're always going to have a better experience when you buy a newer console and 100% backward compatibility. And so this is, continuing that trend. I think it's great. It's really smart. It's the right thing to do. It's the obvious thing to do. I'm surprised it's not happening this year, but that's whatever.
Now we know, by the way, Microsoft has announced that Project Scarlet, which is coming out, I don't know, sometime next year, is officially called Xbox Series X, right? Xbox Series X. So now we know. I'm sorry. It's been a long year. Actually, one of the big stories of the year, weirdly enough, Ninja, the blue-haired master of Fortnite, abandoning Twitch to go to Mixer. I wonder how much they paid him for that.
So I had never heard of this guy before in my life.
You never heard of Blevins?
No.
Blevins.
That's his real name. So sure. Ninja, for those who don't know,
he goes by the name Ninja,
is a purple-haired Fortnite master, one of the best in the world. He and famous DJ Marshmello won the Celebrity Pro-Am last year.
I actually know who Marshmello is.
He wears a marshmallow head while he DJs, but he's also apparently can play Fortnite with a marshmallow head on, which I think honestly should count for something.
It should.
So he is arguably one of Twitch's top streamers. I think maybe even the top streamer on Twitch.
Yep.
Microsoft must have said, Mr. Blevins.
Yeah.
It's like a word with
We'd
you.
like to offer you $1 billion if you will repudiate Twitch, which has really been good for him.
Yeah.
Right. So I don't know. I've never heard of this guy. I
have. Every kid who plays Fortnite knows who Ninja is.
Yeah. No, I actually think this was a really smart decision on Microsoft's part because of a number of reasons. But you have to look at how does this impact the bottom line? Like what could happen out of this? Remember that Microsoft originally intended to ship a new console this year, and then like Sony, they delayed it to next year. Their hardware revenues are collapsing right now because they're midstream between console versions. And, how do you bump that up? 2 of the past 3 quarters, their Xbox revenues were artificially enhanced by what game again? Fortnite.
Yeah. Fortnite's pretty much
what if we figured out a way to make that happen again?
So he had Richard Tyler Blevins had 14 million followers on Twitch. He switched to Mixer like a few days ago. He's now up to 1 million.
Yeah.
But that's going to be the problem, is it's not as popular a platform.
Right.
But
obviously,
it's not
going to be a problem for him because he's probably making a ton of money.
They've got to offer him $10-20 million at least for this.
Yep.
I would guess.
Yep.
Because it's exclusive. He's been on YouTube. He's been other places, but he has 21 million subscribers on YouTube.
The day that this was announced, the #1 app and the #1 game in the iOS App Store were both Microsoft products.
Wow.
And it was Mixer and Minecraft.
That's what it does.
Yep.
That's what it does. He was paid, according to Reuters, $1 million by Electronic Arts to play Apex Legends, the Fortnite competitor, which he quickly abandoned. But he got the $1 million, right?
Yeah, sure.
He's a Red Bull. He's a sponsor of his stuff. I mean, he's the closest thing to a Michael Jordan of esports that we've got. I mean, he's got the endorsements. He's got the followers. He's
like the Oprah of Mixer.
Yeah, he is. That's exactly what he is.
I'm sure he wants that to be his tagline too. Yeah. I am the Oprah of Mixer.
I can't wait till he starts a book club.
So that's the big story, right?
Yep.
Ninja. How old is he? He's 28.
Sure.
28. He's even married, girls, so don't get your hopes up.
Think back to the original HoloLens and some of the reactions that we had to that. Mary Jo and I and others got to see it very early on when it was still connected to, remember all the cables they had, and it was a really manual process of determining the distance between your eyes so that it was exactly right, and you had to get the thing on your head exactly right, and there was an eye, a nose piece you had to position exactly right, and the size of your head, and it was just a lot of stuff. And then
now
you went
it's
in
just
and
a hat.
Software. Yeah, now it's just a hat. That alone, I don't want to say that is an innovation exactly. I mean, obviously the thing gets more comfortable and nicer as you go, but that actually is a dramatic step forward. Just the naturalness of using it. It's a much more seamless experience. But the big complaint about HoloLens, of course, was the field of view. And I should say, before I say that, the central magic of HoloLens has always been its ability to route these virtual objects, these holograms, into the space you're viewing and make them seem like they're part of it. They react naturally to the surfaces and accurately to the surfaces. They don't ever bobble or move or whatever. They feel like they're rooted there, and your eyes fool your brain. It makes them seem real. And it's always done a great job at that. The problem is that the field of view has always been such that things get clipped, especially above and below this little viewport that you have. So you see the room, but you're only seeing holograms through a very narrow space. And, that was my big complaint. It's magical, but, you have to kind of really move your head around to see things. And if, a little virtual ball bounces by, you could lose it forever because it just goes out of that mail slot. So HoloLens 2 doesn't fix it completely. There's still a bounding rectangle or whatever they call it, but it feels to me, or it seems to me, that it's about twice as high as it was before.
That's what they claimed, right? They said.
Well, they did claim a 2x improvement in the field of view.
Diagonally. Yeah, they said diagonally.
So the way I would say it is, it seems like it's almost twice as tall. It's probably a little wider as well, and maybe that explains the diagonal. I can't. There's no way to measure it when you're looking at it, but
and they don't give that number out. I mean, they know.
Yeah. Well, I didn't ask either, but I mean, to me, I just looked at it. I said, this really does seem like it's twice as much. Yeah. So that seemed very accurate to me. That's a big deal.
Yeah.
But in a way, it's not as big of a deal as hand tracking, which is something I had heard was coming before, and then eye tracking, which works in tandem with hand tracking, so that you can interact with these objects in new ways. So one of the big problems with HoloLens, and we see this with virtual reality headsets as well, is that the original gesture-based system they came up with is very imprecise. And so eventually they realized we're going to have controllers for this thing, and we'll use these controllers to do more precise movements. But now with hand and eye tracking, you can select and interact with these virtual objects much more naturally using your hands. And you can also use speech commands. And so, for example, if there's a bunch of objects out there, in the past you'd have to rotate your head and look up at it, and now you can keep your vision forward at whatever the big scene is, but you can look with your eyes, which I still have a hard time doing. I'm so used to, you kind of do this robotic thing, but it will track your eye movement. It knows which one you're looking at, and so if you speak a command, it will go to that object. And these things combined, so it's the wider field of view, the eye tracking, the hand tracking, and the voice commands, and then just the general comfort and natural use of the device, all combined to make this thing a much better product than it was, a much more refined product, a much more advanced product. And it's not night and day. I don't mean to say that. The first one was certainly innovative, very innovative in its own way, but this really is a major step forward. And that's great because, like I said last time, it was very easy to say, well, it's great, but this, the field of view. And that argument is kind of gone, and it's advanced even further because of this other stuff.
So if it's 2 times bigger and 3 times more comfortable, is it 6 times better?
Yes. there was kind of a bit of joking about that because I probably laughed out loud when they first said I think it was 3x more comfortable.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So
I'm not sure what
we couldn't.
Well, so we sort of said, to me, there was no we, it was just me, but I, in a group of people, I don't even know what this thing, but my initial reaction to that was, what comfort metric exactly are we talking about here?
The comfortometer.
No, they actually did measure comfort using a variety of I don't want to say measurement, different types of things that mean comfortable, and they attributed values to them, and they came up with this number legitimately. Like they sort of knew when they said this, people were going to kind of laugh. But I can say, just again, I only used it for a few minutes really, but you put it on your head and it's not heavy and awkward. It doesn't, kind of lean down on your nose and really kind of groove head and make it hurt. There's no dizzying kind of effect to it, which is great. It's probably not that much lighter, but it's maybe more balanced, and it is lighter, but it's definitely more comfortable.
How about the flip up visor thing? Was that good?
Yeah, very easy.
Yeah.
It's very natural. It's like a flip up sunglass thing. It's just easy.
Nice.
The thing that they said, and I have to agree with this, without having gotten a new one out of the box and had to actually configure it, there's basically no setup. Like I was saying with, the first time we saw it, it required all kinds of people. It was like a NASA moon mission or something, right? And this time they just hand it to you, you put it on, and it works.
That's cool. That's good.
Before, remember, we'd go to one, and the HoloLens thing would be a little high, and they'd be doing dials and things and trying to move the visor up and down and trying to figure it out. And this time you just put it in, like, oh yeah, it works.
Neat.
It's a big deal. It's a big deal.
I'm super excited. No more. You don't have to do this. You still can, right?
But still can. But I find that to be, inaccurate's not the right word. I guess unreliable. It's one of those things you kind of, and it doesn't do anything. He goes, but seriously, and you're like, it doesn't do it.
Like, I could never get it to work. I was always like, nope.
Yeah. So without, I should probably.
Did you actually grab some holograms and like move them with your hands? Yeah.
Yeah.
Nice.
So you can do that with your hands, right? And obviously, there's no tactile feedback. There's no haptic something. You're not wearing a glove or anything like that. That potentially could come in the future, I guess. But again, in the sense that your eyes can help fool your mind, even though you're grasping at air, basically, you grab the corner of something, you want to resize it, or you grab it and you want to move it, or whatever it might be, because it responds to you so quickly and seems so real. You still kind of fall for it. It's not like a numb leg effect where it's like, I know I'm walking, but I can't feel the ground. What's going on? It still feels normal, So yeah, you can do that stuff. And like I said, with the eye tracking, it's particularly interesting. The demo I did was literally just a demo. It's not a real world application of any kind, but if you could imagine balls just floating in the air and you look at one of them and you say pop or something, because that was what we did say, and it would explode into some little kaleidoscope of shapes. It would accurately determine which one you were looking at. There was also a bird that was flying around, just kind of hover, like a hummingbird that was hovering there. And if you looked at it, it would kind of move a little bit and look at you and make a little sound, indicating that it knew your attention was on it. And these things happen so seamlessly. It's almost like it's reading your mind, just by looking at it.
Of course, this was the year that Google decided to get into streaming gaming services. We've been talking about Microsoft's xCloud, but along comes Google's Stadia. I wonder what Paul Thurrott thinks about that. On the one hand, they made, kind of a significant announcement of this Stadia gaming service, and they had some really interesting technology and ideas. On the other hand, they were completely vague about its availability, its price. They said this year, and in all honesty, they didn't even address the biggest issue, the elephant in the room, which is those ratty little wires that lead from Google servers to your house.
Well, did they even? I didn't watch this, but did they even talk about the cloud part at all? Like, did they actually?
So this is there's a
like pretty detailed.
They
about
like
that
it. I likened this at the time to what Microsoft's Hololens announcement was. It was as much a demo of Google's cloud capabilities.
Okay.
Yeah.
As HoloLens is a demo of Azure.
Okay.
It's kind of in this case, a consumer-facing proof of concept for their cloud.
I would argue it's even less than a proof of concept, because there's no way to know that this is happening.
Right.
Right.
I mean, they did have a demo.
And that it can happen at scale.
They did the Assassin's Creed Odyssey demo, and the people who used it said, yeah, it's impressive. There's exactly the kinds of occasional glitches. And it was a little ironic that in Google's own stream of this event, there were quite a few glitches.
Right.
So,
Well, here's what I'll say about this thing. I have a lot to say about it, I guess, but just to break it down to kind of a Microsoft-focused thing. We know that Microsoft is working on Project xCloud. What Google just announced is Project xCloud, except it's from Google. And so you have to look at the things that they're adding that Microsoft probably isn't going to do, like the notion of a specialized controller that is connected directly to the network and is in fact its own client.
That was a revelation. That's kind of interesting. That solves some of the latency, right?
Yeah. But you also have to look, and then there's things they didn't announce: pricing, actual game companies they're partnering with, actual
showing off Doom content. Is not like
Doom is please. It's just
wow, you got Doom on it, huh? Okay,
Doom runs on an Apple Watch, right? Yeah. No, but I mean, look. By the way, they said they have Doom on it. You notice they didn't actually do a gameplay demo of Doom either. But okay, whatever. But when you compare what they're doing to what Microsoft is doing, and once you get past the technical stuff, which is basically identical, the thing that Google is missing is decades of experience in the game industry.
Yeah,
right. Partnering with all of the major game companies.
They have overcome that a little bit by hiring from the game industry people like Jade Raymond. And so
two people.
I mean,
I
got two people.
No offense, but two people do not success make. I mean, good for them. But, there are companies with decades of experience like Microsoft, vested interest like Microsoft, legacy hardware platforms like Microsoft that are going to approach this in a different way in some ways, and from different levels of experience. And so Microsoft has the chance. I believe what they're going to do is bring forward as much as they can of the backward compatibility game titles that will run on this service as well, preserving your investment in the Xbox ecosystem, which is an incredible advantage over a new service that has 0 games.
Right.
And so we don't know if Google is going to sell games individually and or have a subscription service where you get some selection of games for some kind of a monthly cost. They've never said anything about any of that, so we'll see what that is. But the Microsoft approach is very much Microsoft, right? We have this thing in the past, which we'll call legacy business, that involves hardware and what we'll call on-prem software. And we're going to offer that while we make a transition to the cloud. And we're going to offer those things side by side. And then eventually we're probably going to go all to the cloud stuff, right? They won't say that now because they don't want to screw up their current business, but that's, I think, what we all agree is going to happen eventually.
And they have announced they're doing this whatever cloud thing.
Yeah.
Brad Sams had the Phil Spencer email that was sent out to the company saying, hey, you ain't seen what we're doing at E3.
They'll have their announcement like this at E3. We kind of already knew that was coming. That's fine. We knew Google was going to announce this, basically. It's as expected. So I think the only surprise to Microsoft was probably that controller. Google is a kind of a goofy company, but every once in a while they do this kind of googly thing where you're like, oh, that's
a good idea.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
That's pretty cool. I think the controller idea was a good idea. Is a good idea, especially in this world of heterogeneous cross-platform usage, right? Microsoft obviously has a controller. They can connect it to mobile devices, whatever. But I like the idea of Chromecast on a big screen, and that's your whole setup, and you have a controller.
How easy is that, right?
It's pretty cool. Yeah, and the other thing that became really clear watching this, which I guess I kind of understood intellectually, but you kind of see it and you're like, yeah, okay, this is going to make sense. The reason that some people choose consoles over PCs is that they're less expensive and they're less complex, right? You can always get more on a PC, as more being more frame rate, more graphics quality, higher resolutions, whatever it might be. But there's a great cost to that, both an actual cost and the complexity cost. And, consoles are just easy. You get up and you go and you're off and running. And this thing does that to consoles, doesn't it, right? It's going to be way cheaper for the end user because there's no upfront hardware cost. It's going to be way simpler. It's going to be way quicker, if everything works out the way they say it's going to. And, one of the problems we have today on a console that will not be a problem on this service, and this cannot be overstated, is the software update problem where you buy a game, you bring it home, install it off a disk, and you still have 56 gigabytes of updates to install.
Yep.
Or you pre-installed it digitally, and day one arrives, and you still have 56 gigabytes. And that 56 gig or whatever the size download goes out to every single person in the world with that game. Every single time it gets updated. With this system, it's just like any cloud computing system. Yep. You update it once in the cloud, essentially.
Yeah, they also, on the server side, they have this very powerful GPU that NVIDIA, AMD custom designed for them that looked more powerful, frankly, according to their numbers, than an Xbox One X or a PS4.
The problem with this system and the way where it breaks down compared to a console, especially, is the quality of the experience is going to vary.
Right. That's the real problem. Yep.
Yeah, it's a huge problem.
If you've got gigabit bandwidth with zero latency, you're going to love it.
Yep.
And
but you could have great bandwidth, bad latency, and it's going to be terrible. Yep. You could have okay bandwidth and great latency, and it's
Microsoft, when it does its version of this, will it do it? The other thing I saw as a plus for Google is it'll run on a Pixelbook, as you pointed out, a Chromecast Ultra plugged into a TV.
Yeah.
Is Microsoft going to do something like that, or will you have to have?
So I don't know exactly the scheme Microsoft's going to use. What they're talking about is cross-platform. One of the things we'll talk about a little bit more later is, Microsoft is bringing Xbox Live to mobile and to Nintendo Switch. It's sort of like the when Apple was talking back at CES about bringing iTunes and AirPlay to smart TVs and to smart TVs. I was saying at the time, and we're starting to see that this is true, that for this to really work, it needs to be everywhere. And everywhere includes things like Roku or Amazon Fire TV. Like, you need to get this thing out everywhere. What you don't want to do, and this is something Lorraine just was talking about, is create an entirely new client on every single platform on Earth, right? You don't want to have to natively support Samsung smart TVs, LG smart TVs, Roku, every single thing on Earth. Like, it'd be really complex. And so what you need is some simple remote app, and you're doing everything up in the cloud.
It's called your browser. That's the beauty of this.
Well, Google that's the thing. So the one thing Google has almost lucked into in a way is this Chromecast or Google Cast technology, which is built into their browser, is way better in my mind than what the Microsoft's equivalent is, the Miracast technology that's in Windows 10. It allows them to make that the bar. Like, as long as you can run that browser on your device or have a Chromecast, which is an inexpensive sub-$100 4K HDR kind of streamer, then you can play these games. It's smart. Microsoft is going to have to abstract it to that same level. They can't have a rich client of any kind anywhere, right? It has to be this exact thing. So I don't know exactly how they're going to accomplish that.
This will be an interesting test of the new Microsoft and the idea of the unsiloed Microsoft, because the business interests at Microsoft will say, oh, no, you got to have it run on Windows or Xbox. It has to run on our products with a rich client. I gather something happened last week.
Something, yes. As we say in the Windows world.
Something happened. And was it Micah and beer? Was that the issue?
No, it was
he's a gluten-free
we had brought
guy.
up Patch. Yeah, we brought up Patch Tuesday.
Yes, and he didn't know what that was.
He didn't know what Patch Tuesday was.
Yeah.
And we were like, really? So we had to, and then we kind of talked through that. And then he said, it sounds like the name of a cocktail.
And I said, yes, if you're an IT pro, you are going to need a Patch Tuesday after every patch.
So Stephanie Thurrott has invented one.
Well, we resolved that we would come up with a cocktail.
I love it.
And we would call it Patch Tuesday. And so I talked to my wife about this. And for whatever reason, over the past year, she's become something of a mixologist. She's been making cocktails and experimenting with cocktails and everything. And she came up with the Patch Tuesday.
It's our drink of the week, and it actually sounds quite yummy.
It does.
It's excellent.
Is it? Yeah.
3 ounces. It's halfway between a whiskey sour and an old fashioned.
Yeah, it reminds me of an old fashioned a little bit. But
it's based on that.
Yeah. Go ahead. You tell us the recipe, Paul.
Well, so she wrote this, right? So this is my wife's thing, but it's 3 ounces of whiskey, half an ounce of lemon juice, 2 dashes of bitters, because Patch Tuesday is a little bit sour and a little bit bitter, and then half an ounce of honey to add a little hope.
Oh, nice.
Half of an egg white, right? If you make a proper, I guess it's a whiskey sour.
That's a whiskey sour.
Yeah. Proper whiskey sour will have the egg white, but you shake everything together over ice, serve over ice. By the way, this large whiskey cube thing, get these things on Amazon. The cube trays for these are like $2 a piece. If you're into cocktails, you need this, like the whiskey cubes.
I have a whiskey ball.
No, cubes are better.
Cubes are better because this is round. Yeah, because it doesn't dissolve as fast.
No, it's because they're easier to make. Because when you make the round ones, you got to work at it. Like
I have a special
it's just a bigger
ball maker.
It's just a bigger tray.
Do you make the whiskey cube with whiskey?
No.
Or water?
No, that would be. We're not complete.
That's what I was thinking. I was thinking you made it with whiskey.
What makes it a whiskey cube? Just the size.
Just the size, yeah. Actually, she might mean whiskey. Like it made. We have not done that. So I will say we don't do that. But yeah,
the ball. I've used the ball with whiskey. I mean, it's the size of a snowball. It's large. You have a special maker to make it.
So the problem with either approach is you're going to change the taste of the drink over time.
A little water is good in whiskey, but not a lot.
Right.
Yeah, but this is a cocktail, right? And so honestly, maybe I just drink it fast enough. I don't really have a problem here, but
I would drink this. This sounds really good, especially
sounds good,
right?
The cherry thing. We know these people locally that make alcohol of all kinds. They make everything from the craziest internal destroying just hard alcohol to, vodkas and rums and gins and everything. But we use their moonshine to make maraschino cherries that are, infused now with this stuff.
Oh, so when you say hard, you mean it's alcoholic?
Yes.
Nice.
Yes. And as my wife says, this serves two because no one should drink alone on Patch Tuesday.
I love it. I'll make sure we get some for Micah. That's great.
It is a good drink.
That sounds fabulous. You're right. It's a little kind of between an old-fashioned and a whiskey sour. It sounds great.
Yep.
I've had a few Patch Tuesdays today already, and I have to vouch for the fact that they're delicious and a little bit strong. Thank you, Stephanie Thurrott. Thank you, Paul Thurrott. Thank you, Mary Jo Foley. Most of all, thanks to you for watching and listening to Windows Weekly all year long. It's been a banner 2019, and I can't wait because I think 2020 is going to be even more fun. Make sure you subscribe, tune in, and we'll bring you a new Windows Weekly every Wednesday right here on the Twit Network. Thanks for watching our best of. Have a Merry Christmas, a Happy New Year, and we'll see you in 2020.